A UK war monitor says Israeli airstrikes killed 44 people early Friday. The attack occurred near the northern city of Aleppo. The war monitor says the casualties included Syrian soldiers and militants from the Iran-backed group Hezbollah. Human rights groups have called it the deadliest attack in Syria in years. The IDF and Hezbollah are also engaged in combat at the Israel-Lebanon border. For more analysis, we are joined now by CBS News national security contributor Sam Vinograd for our weekly national security recap. So, Sam, let's start off with those strikes in Syria. What does it tell us about the current state of conflict?
Well, the conflict is clearly not contained. Israel has been engaged in conflict with its neighbors since its inception. There have been various cross-border strikes just in the last few years between Israel, Syria, and Lebanon. And these most recent actions against Iranian-backed proxies really point out that the risk of direct confrontation between Israel and its neighbors remains quite high in this threat environment.
Well, talk to us about the status of Israel's military actions in Gaza. What do we expect this next phase of the war to look like?
Well, on the diplomatic front this week, we did have the UN Security Council pass a resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire and release of hostages. There's no real enforcement mechanism for that resolution, however, and hostages have been in captivity for almost 6 months. Humanitarian aid is at a trickle. We did get reports that the Israeli military has agreed to engage in force protection for U.S. troops that may be in the region to build a maritime pier to help facilitate the delivery of humanitarian aid, but we have no timeline on when that may happen. Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that Israel is in the final stages of preparing for a ground incursion into Rafah. The United States has voiced deep concerns and has asked that an Israeli delegation come to Washington to present alternative options. We don't have an update on when that may happen, and that visit really may be just too little too late.
Let's turn now to terrorism. It's been 1 week since the attack in Moscow that killed nearly 150 people. In the days since that attack, what more have we learned about this incident and the global terror threat of the Islamic State?
Well, the largest terrorism-related threat facing the United States today comes from lone offenders or individuals and small groups, which are incredibly hard to track. Large foreign terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda and ISIS have built up really global networks of regional affiliates, like ISIS-K, which has claimed responsibility for the attack in Russia previously this month. ISIS-K has historically been focused on attacks in Afghanistan and Pakistan, but they continue to expand the geographic scope of their operations. The United States has been aware of the threat ISIS-K poses for a long time, and in this complex threat environment, United States counterterrorism officials depend on a global architecture of intelligence partnerships and law enforcement partnerships. We collectively try to get a snapshot of terrorist motivations and ambitions. It's worth noting that Russia, because of Putin's destabilizing behavior, whether it's the invasion of Ukraine, the wrongful detainment of individuals like Evan, who you were just speaking about, Russia just does not have access to those kinds of intelligence partnerships. And it's really hurting Russia's security. While the United States reportedly shared a summary of the threat reporting we had with Russia, that would not have been incredibly detailed. And Putin's counterterrorism architecture is likely suffering because he does not have the kinds of partnerships that could help keep the Russian people safe from terrorist attacks.
All right, Sam, let's end here in the U.S. We've spoken at length this week about the victims of the Baltimore Bridge collapse and the logistical challenges that the city now faces. I understand that you also see in this story national security implications. Explain.
I see economic and national security implications to the bridge collapse and the closure of the Port of Baltimore. The supply chain impacts are abundantly clear. We had 4,000 commercial trucks traversing the bridge each day. The Port of Baltimore is the 17th largest port in the United States, the largest port for auto shipments alone. So the supply chain impacts are clear. But the world also saw a bastion of our critical infrastructure literally collapse, fold like a house of cards. And our adversaries are taking note. There is now a global understanding that U.S. critical infrastructure is vulnerable to an accident and to an attack, whether it be by a large shipping vessel or otherwise. And I would imagine that U.S. Homeland Security and national security officials are trying to monitor intelligence to make sure that there are not copycat actors or that folks aren't taking lessons learned about the risks that critical infrastructure may be presented with.
All right, Sam Vinograd, thank you.